What if there was a scandal and no one cared? Those words are the beginning of how Alliance for a Better Utah describes itself. The left-leaning nonprofit organization credited with bringing down Utah Attorney General John Swallow over illegal campaign finance activities stands on three pillars: balance, transparency, and accountability. I sat down with its founder, Josh Kanter, and asked him three questions. Healthcare is another issue that Alliance for a Better Utah has as one of its marquee issues. And just recently, in fact, there was a federal judge in Texas that ruled that Obamacare is unconstitutional. Now, that's going to wind up in the courts again, and litigation will take it wherever it's going to take it. But the argument seems to revolve around the idea of whether healthcare is actually a right or not. Mm-hmm. How do we resolve that question, that central question of whether health care is or is not a right?
Well, we can resolve the question as to whether it's a right or not. Certainly, again, you're going to have progressives who believe it's a right. I personally believe that that's the right answer. But at the same time, the other side of the equation, which is, supposedly maybe a more conservative way of looking at it, but economically, it's the right thing to do. The fact that we're treating people in emergency rooms for ordinary care, or because it becomes critical care because they didn't get ordinary care, is really a problem that this country has to face. We're the only developed country that spends 19% of our GDP on healthcare spending. So we have to solve this problem. And whether we solve it because it's a human right or whether we solve it because it's a conservative value and an economic value, I'm not sure really matters. We need to come together and solve it.
What are some of the things that we are missing as a culture here in Utah because of the political imbalance that is present right now?
Well, I think the biggest thing is really, again, if you're watching discussion in sort of the public square about particular issues, whether that's, let's stay on Medicaid expansion for years, although it was Governor Herbert who really pushed the Healthy Utah plan. Once that failed, the legislature was unwilling to really push for any significant Medicaid expansion. So Alliance for Better Utah, I think, provided a valuable and needed voice to really push and say, wait a second, there's a whole other conversation to have about Medicaid expansion and making sure that people are informed about that. What are the economics? Who's being hurt by the failure to expand Medicaid? And so we'll participate in those kinds of conversations. So I think there are all kinds of policy discussions that, because the state is dominated by a legislature that is so conservative, that it's often, the talking points are often just being repeated and you're not hearing kind of a full debate of the issue. And so our biggest goal is to make sure there's that full, robust debate, and then again let the legislature, the voters decide.
Do you consider Utah to be a theocracy?
Personally, I don't. I think that it's a really difficult question, and I know people have very strong reactions to the involvement of the church here. A majority of the state until recently were members of the church. Obviously, Salt Lake County, we just saw some data that the church membership is now under 50%.
Right.
I don't know what it was like to live in Boston in the 50s or in the 40s, and people, I assume, had to say the same thing. I personally believe the church has the right to talk about whatever issues it chooses to and to advocate for whatever positions it wants to its members, and then I hope its members will make informed decisions on their own and choose the policies and the votes that they want to pursue. And I think Prop 2 is an interesting example of that, where we saw obviously a significant majority of the state vote in favor of Prop 2, notwithstanding the church coming out and speaking against it.
Well, Josh Kanter, founder and chairman of the board of Alliance for a Better Utah, thank you so much for being part of Three Questions.
Thank you for having me.
To see Bob's entire interview with Alliance for a Better Utah founder Josh Kanter, including whether conservatives are correct in claiming credit for Utah's success in business and innovation, go to Fox 13 Now.